So we've been talking about reference systems and grid systems that people have devised to locate places. This week we're going to talk about the ways that we have divided up the land, partitioned the land, and the really amazing geographic patterns that have resulted from three land partitioning methods or systems. We're going to look at meets and bounds, French long lot, and the U.S. grid system called PLSS, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So when I talk about the geometry or the look of the land, what I'm referring to is the lines, the spaces, the divisions that you're going to see from the built environment. And so here's kind of a cartoon or a drawing of all three methods. The meets and bounds has no regular pattern at all. There's no orientation. It's not north, south, east, west. The shapes have a lot of irregularity. There's no even distribution of space. The Public Land Survey System, PLSS, is very regular. For the most part, there's often some offsets, but it's a very strong, striking grid, squared, checkerboard pattern. And the French long lot is kind of sounds like its name. It's very linear. So we're just going to talk about these a little bit. Here are three examples of those same systems from Google Maps. So you can see this is from England. It is the meets and bounds. I don't see any pattern or regularity in this. I see roads in between or fences in between, but there's no real pattern. Here's the PLSS, very strong grid pattern. Now, in between the grids, you can see some differences in growth and shading that make it look irregular, but there's a very strong squared pattern imposed on this land. And this is an image from up in Canada, and you can, when you look at this, you see these road patterns that are running in very narrow linear striations across the landscape. So that would be French long lot. So let's talk first about meets and bounds. You're going to see meets and bounds in the 13 original colonies. This was an old system in Europe of dividing up land, and it was a way to for people to pick the best pieces of land. They would take those irregular shapes and move it from the side of the edge of the creek up to the mountain, over to the big oak tree, and back down to the creek. And so people would come onto the land and then just take the pieces that they wanted and describe it by the physical features. Problems with this is that those physical features over time tend to move or die or erode. So it's not a very permanent way of looking at the landscape. Again, you would describe it from this rock down to the middle of the creek, over to the pond. We have a lot of county boundaries in Oregon that were originally devised in the middle of the Willamette River, but the river has moved, and so those county boundaries are now not in the middle of the river, which doesn't make people very happy. If you were to look at a map of the United States, and you will right now, we're going to look at meets and bounds. So you're going to find meets and bounds up in this area, some in Texas, but Texas always has a lot of the Spanish and Mexican land grant land claims in that area. The rest of this country, west of Ohio and all the way to Oregon, is dominated by the rectangular system of surveys, or the public land survey system. So the French long lot system was divided or developed so that everybody had access to major transportation or good drainage. So if you set up your land not in big squares but in long lines, everybody could have a section of land along the river or along the highway. And then over time, these land pieces probably did not start out that narrow. They were probably larger strips of land, but after families have children, the land gets divided and those parcels get narrower and narrower. Here's an example of kind of houses along a road and some of the land strips. Here's an image from, I think this is Louisiana, along one of the canals, and you can really see that linear pattern just being very striking. Okay. So if you were trying to identify locations for French long log, you would look obviously in places that had French ancestry, because people tend to take their culture with them when they relocate or they resettle, and part of that culture is how do you divide up land. So you're going to find French long lot evidence in the Northeast near Canada and in Louisiana. The third system is the Public Land Survey System, or also called the Township and Range System. And in 1783, the government needed to find a way to get people out to the new territories to the west. Part of this was because there was interest from Russia in setting up claims in the western part of the U.S., and we had promised soldiers of the Revolutionary War some land. And so they needed to find a way to devise a system of identifying land parcels so that they could give it to people. And so in 1785, they developed the USPLSS, or the PLSS, or Township and Range System. And surveyors did not start surveying in Oregon until 1851. So the PLSS system is devised of several meridians and baselines, and so these were starting places that they could begin surveying, and by creating a grid along these meridians and baselines. So in Oregon and Washington, we have what's known as the Willamette Meridian, and the baseline runs right through Portland. And so in 1851, surveyors came and started here at the origin of this system and began developing a grid system of township, range, and sections to help identify land parcels. And so you can see Montana has its own baseline and meridian. So all over the country, these baselines and meridians were developed. So a township and range system was another grid system. So there was a principal meridian. That was what we call in Oregon the Willamette Meridian, and a baseline. And from that, then 6 mile by 6 mile grids were laid out in all four corners of the meridian and baseline grid. And so measuring north to south are townships, measuring east to west are ranges. So if my cursor is here at the origin, and I go up 1 6 mile square, I've gone up one township, so township 1 north. This would be township 2 north. If I go back to my origin and go east 1 6 mile square, that would be range 1 east. Another 6 mile square is range 2 east, range 1 west, range 2 west. That's 36 mile square, so that's really kind of too big to give away for land, and so there needed to be a way to create smaller sections of land. And so each 36 mile grid, or 36 mile square, was divided into 36 1 mile sections, and they all start counting with number 1 in the northeast corner and end with 36 in the southeast corner, so 1 down through 36. And again, that's a 1 mile section, and a lot of land claims gave people smaller sections than that, 320 acres or so. And so they needed to be able to describe these in quarter sections or quarter sections. So this would be the northwest quarter of section 13, township 2 south, range 2 west, and it would be, if it were Oregon, the Willamette Meridian. So the dimensions, so 320 acres would have been a half a section. So 2 quarter sections would have been deeded to somebody with that. I think the reading has a little practice sheet on talking about the different land divisions. In 1850, the United States offered the Donation Land Claim Act, and so that was before the surveyors actually got to Oregon, and they offered people different parcels of land depending on if they were married or not married or white or whatever. There's several pages of this this act that you can find on the web. But so there was, what did they say? Almost, 320 acres to almost any qualified settler. They had to stay in the land for 4 years and make a living off that land, and then it was deeded to them. This set up a huge physical attribute of Oregon, which is called the ONC lands. That's that checkerboard pattern of clear cuts that you see, because a lot of the land that was given as sections was given to road builders who later was sold to timber companies. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. So the Donation Land Claim Act, people got to Oregon and got to the good lands before the surveyors got there. So some of the land had been claimed by early settlers, some of the land claimed by the Donation Land Claim Act folks. One of the requirements was that they lay out their parcels in north, south, east, west. They didn't always do that. But what happened is some of the best land got subdivided into very many multiple smaller sections. So when the surveyors came through, they would grid out this regular 36 section area, and then if there were any prior claims or donation land claims spotting in the land, then they would start numbering those. So for instance, in Oregon, let me hold that. So if we look at a topographic map of Eugene, for example, you can see the section numbers. So 30 would be a regular section number, 29 would be here, this next one should be 30. But when the surveyors come, they see that there's already a claim, and so after they go through and count everything up to 36 and they start back, and I don't know what the system was of how they numbered that, but you do see numbers that are higher than 36, so 38, 64, or prior claims, and probably part of the Donation Land Claim Act. Topozone used to be free, so that's just so sad that it's not anymore. Anyway, okay, so when we talk about the patterns on the landscape, this is what we're talking about. We're looking at those geometric shapes that are caused due to cultural decisions in the way people divide up the land in order to create ownership. And those patterns stay on the land for a long time. They inform how you build roads. You have to buy property to cut through this road, but you could build roads around it. So they have a big impact, and township, range, and section are used in many applications in resource management or planning in Oregon and other states.